Hello and welcome. You're watching To The Point. One of the most radical suggestions made in response to the Congress's shattering defeat in UP was made by former Congress Minister Shankar Aiyar in a blog as well as in an interview he gave to the Times of India today. He says that the Congress needs to take a leaf out of Sonia Gandhi's book in 2004 and create the widest possible alliance of inclusion, because that is the only way of countering the BJP and Mr. Modi. In the Times of India interview, he added that if need be, Rahul Gandhi should be prepared to forego leadership. With me to discuss this suggestion, why he's made it, why he believes it's feasible, and why he believes it might work, is the author himself, Shankar Aiyar. Shankar Aiyar, let's start with your core suggestion made in your blog. What you said to the Times of India this morning, I'll come to later on and separately. Your core suggestion is that the only way of defeating the BJP and Modi is to create a grand alliance of inclusion. Explain to me why you think that is the right response to the verdict from UP following the earlier verdict in 2014 nationwide. Why is this the best way, or perhaps the only way, of defeating Mr. Modi?
Defeating Mr. Modi is a matter of winning India back for the causes for which we fought for our independence and built our modern nationhood. He has succeeded in winning in Uttar Pradesh by not finding one single Muslim candidate in 403 seats in a state that has 40 million Muslims who constitute about a quarter of the population of the state. And I was on a television program on Saturday when this tsunami was hitting us, where Shrapan Dasgupta was asked why. And his frank answer was, because we couldn't find a Muslim who adhered to our program. So here we are with Savarkar's dream of all the Hindu communities being gathered together in a single Hindu flag, and the othering of the Muslim actually taking place. So we must beat him.
So this is the reason why beating Mr. Modi in your eyes is important. My question is, why is the only way to beat Mr. Modi the creation of a grand alliance of all opposition parties coming together? Why do you think that is a necessary, if not the only way of doing it?
Because the secular forces have got so fractionated over several decades that unless their votes are pooled together, it doesn't start matching the minority vote on which Modi has won, both in the country as a whole in 2014 and in Uttar Pradesh in 2017.
I'll come to this point you make about Modi winning only on a minority vote in a moment's time. But the first thing that is absolutely implicit in what you're saying is that Congress, the Grand National Party of India, 130 years old, cannot beat the BJP on its own. BJP can only be defeated by a grand alliance of all parties. Congress on its own cannot do it.
Yes, in present circumstances, and this is the consequence of a large number of secular forces deciding to move away from the all-inclusive Congress to try and fight their little battles on an exclusivist basis. So we change from an all-inclusive party to an all-inclusive coalition.
But, will your colleagues to begin with accept that Congress on its own can't do it? Surely Congress's self-belief is predicated on the belief that it can defeat Mr. Modi on its own. Here's a former Congress minister, a stalwart, saying, actually, let's be honest, we Congress can't do it on our own. Now, will your partymen and your colleagues accept that? Because it's almost a half admission of incapacity, if not defeat.
They accepted this 20 years ago. The last time we asserted that we will go on our own was at Pachmadi in 1998, which is 19 years ago. And ever since that, particularly after our dramatic win in 2004, repeated in 2009, we have learned how to live with a rainbow coalition.
So the decision to form a coalition goes back to Panchmari in the early 1990s, and in fact, in a sense, it was echoed by Sonia Gandhi's behavior in 2004 when she created the UPA. And that is your justification for saying, we've done it before, we've accepted the need for an alliance earlier. Now, at this point of time, when defeating Modi is absolutely critical, the only way we can do it is if we, Congress, join a bigger alliance. On our own, Congress cannot do it in the present circumstances.
I wouldn't say it's the only way, but it is the best way, the most assured way.
But the critical point is Congress on its own in present circumstances cannot defeat Modi.
I agree. I think it's the obvious story to be told by the figures we've seen.
Let's now come to the point you made about Mr. Modi only winning on what you call a minority vote. Your belief that the widest possible inclusive alliance against the BJP can defeat the BJP is predicated on the facts that in 2014, 70% of the country didn't vote for BJP, and on the fact that in 2017, 58% of UP didn't vote for Mr. Modi. And therefore, you're implying that it was the fractured nature of the opposition that permitted the BJP to win, not the direct appeal of either the BJP itself or Mr. Modi and his personality. But my question is very simple. Do the facts bear out that conclusion?
Absolutely. I'd say that your summing up was a hole in one.
Well,
Excellently done.
That's very kind of you to put it like that, but let me tell you why I don't believe the facts bear you out. Mr. Modi and his allies won 325 seats out of 403 in UP. Mr. Modi alone won over 81% of the seats he contested. You can't win in that number and on that scale without sizable numbers of Muslims voting for you.
Absolutely. And the Muslims...
And so they did vote for him.
Absolutely. The Muslims didn't vote for him. They voted for a series of parties. And what we need to do is not just look at the Muslim vote, although that's very, very important. What we need to look at is the anti-BJP vote.
But let me stop you there, because the point I was making is that if he wins 325, if he wins 81.25% of the seats he's contested, which is unprecedented, then surely a large number of Muslims did vote for him. And therefore, this belief that if you can get the 70% who didn't vote together, you'll defeat Mr. Modi is baseless.
Well, let's get as many Muslim votes as we can together. But I'm certainly not limiting myself to just getting the Muslim vote. I'm talking about the anti-Modi vote in the middle of two Modi tsunamos. I'm talking about that at a time when Modi zoomed, he lost 70% of the Indian electorate.
Let's come to the second reason why perhaps this assumption doesn't stand up to the facts. The first is that many Muslims clearly would have voted for Mr. Modi. We just don't know how many. But the second is that one reason why Modi won in such a huge way is the personal trust and faith people have in Mr. Modi. They believe his sincerity, they believe he will deliver, and somehow they feel secure in the hands of his strong leadership. That is a direct appeal that Mr. Modi has, which, putting together what you call the fractured opposition, won't effectively counter.
31% followed in 2014 the thesis that you're putting forward. 41% perhaps, or 38% followed your thesis you're putting forward in Uttar Pradesh. I am looking not at those who are mesmerized by the Modi magic. I'm looking at those who have not been mesmerized, even at a time when so many have been mesmerized. And it is on them that we must rely to defeat this man. It's necessary to defeat his philosophy. It's necessary to defeat his exclusivism.
It may be necessary to defeat his philosophy. I'm not questioning that. I'm questioning your method of trying to do so. And that method, I'm saying, doesn't stand up to the facts for a third reason. I've given you two already. The third reason is that Mr. Modi now has presented himself as the party, as the man who is going to look after the poor. He has actually come across as the party that looks after the poor, and your old image of being the pro-poor party has been stolen by him. That means that a variety of people of different languages, different castes, different regions, maybe even different religions who are poor will actually see a good, solid reason for voting for him. This alliance of the fractured opposition won't defeat that.
Every single member of this potential alliance has as its fundamental program the removal of poverty. It's not as if the DMK or the ADMK is not standing for the removal of poverty.
Except that they believe Modi when he says it, they don't any longer believe the others.
31% believe him, 70% don't. In UP, even in UP, it was about 40% that believed him and 60% who didn't. And therefore, what I'm saying is, those who have not been mesmerized by the Modi magic, they are the ones whom we should turn to, because even today, at the height of Modi, they do not trust the man and they don't believe that he is the Messiah of the poor.
There's a huge danger if this coalition were to actually come together, and I'll question its feasibility in a moment's time. For the purpose of this question, let's assume it can come together. The danger is that Mr. Modi will turn around and say, what Indira Gandhi so effectively said in 71 when the Grand Alliance against her was created, मैं कहती हूँ गरीबी हटाओ, वो कहते हैं इंदिरा हटाओ. And it worked magnificently for her. It could work again for Modi.
It was because that Grand Alliance was largely led by a discredited Swatantra Party and a discredited syndicate. And this alliance is going to be having in its leadership a whole range of people who have persuaded their respective peoples in their respective states that they stand for poverty alleviation.
You know, the problem with this alliance is that the only thing that will stitch it together, the only glue that will bind it together, is hatred of Modi. In every other way, you're bringing together people who are rivals, people who have a history of not being able to get on with each other, people who publicly criticized, if not vilified each other. The only thin cement is dislike of Modi. It may not even bind them for the full duration of the campaign.
You're saying dislike of Modi, hatred of Modi. I'm saying what binds them is that they want to preserve the India that we brought to freedom and the India that we have been building for the last 70 years.
Shankar,
it's that which is going to keep us together.
Shankar, Aiyar, you know history as well as I do. This was, in a sense, the raison d'etre behind the creation of the Janata Party in 1977 to preserve the Indian democracy that we love, because Indira had shattered it in the emergency. One, I don't deny that, but look how quickly they fell apart thereafter. That's a second danger. You might just conceivably win because the index of opposition unity will go in your favor. You'll probably fall apart the second you win.
Since you know history as well as I do, might I remind you that the Janata fell apart because the RSS and the BJP, in those days the Jan Sangh, was part of it. Here we have ideological coherence of a kind that was lacking in the Janata Party.
You have ideological coherence? Yeah. What ideological coherence unites Mamta and the left in Bengal? What ideological coherence unites the BSP and SP in UP? What ideological coherence actually unites the Tamil Dravidian parties in Tamil Nadu? They are bitterly opposed to each other. They see each other as their worst enemies. Could they ever come together on a common platform?
Well, if we don't come together, then the Grand Alliance will not take place.
This is why I'm questioning
saying,
it.
Let us explore this, because if we don't even explore it, obviously it's not going to happen. And in that process, there will have to be a reconciliation. But remember, and remember above all, that this is not hatred of Modi as you call it. It is a desire to preserve the India that we've all been building. There's not a single political party in India that does not include Muslim representatives. The only one that doesn't is the BJP.
There's a very interesting shift in that last answer in your position. In your blog and in your Times of India interview, you asserted your idea as the best way, possibly the only way of defeating Modi and the BJP. Now suddenly you've said, this is an idea worth exploring. In other words, you're not so sure it can happen. You're simply saying, let's try it because it could happen.
I'm not going to not even explore it because of what you said. I'm saying there will be difficulties in the way. It is the best way, even if it's not the only way. And because it's the best way, I think I'll be able to convey satisfaction to those who are otherwise quarreling with each other, that we should come together. And it's not necessary that absolutely every party should be in it. What is necessary is that it should approach a Mahagathbandhan to the extent possible.
Well, actually, it is necessary that critical parties, like to take UP as an example, both SP and BSP should be in it.
Yeah.
It is absolutely essential that critical parties, take Bengal as another example, the left and Mamta should be in it. Yeah. It is absolutely essential, take Tamil Nadu, that both the AIADMK and DMK should be in it.
No.
That's the only exception.
No, it's quite easy to form this coalition without both being there.
How do you ever get BSP and SP together? How do you ever get Mamta and the left together? No matter how much you explore
I don't see any great difficulty in that in the present circumstances where Mayawati has suffered a huge setback.
So fear of Modi is the only thing that will do it.
You're putting forward the argument that Modi will put forward.
No, I'm putting
saying,
forward reality.
Please move away from fear of Modi to fear of a Hindutva India.
But the only real difference that gives you confidence that post-UP, BSP and SP can come together, or Mamta and the left can come together, which wasn't possible pre-UP, is fear of Modi, because Modi is won so overwhelmingly, and there's the fear that he'll win overwhelmingly again. That fear will unite them. And I say to you, that fear is a thin glue.
I'm saying that it's not fear of Modi. I think it's the fourth time I've said it on your program. We have to preserve the idea of India, on which every one of these parties is agreed except for the BJP.
And you do believe that they subscribe so strongly to that idea of India that it will be a stronger glue than what I call fear and dislike of Modi?
Absolutely.
All right.
Again, another hole in one. Congratulations.
All right. Let me now come to what you said in your Times of India interview this morning. There you said that for the creation of this grand alliance, Rahul Gandhi should be prepared to forego leadership. First of all, is that, because to many it will seem like it, is that a subtle way of accepting that Rahul Gandhi on his own simply is not going to be able to match Modi's appeal if he were to be made the prime ministerial candidate? This is acceptance of that reality by a congressman.
When you first mentioned this to me on the telephone, you took great care to use two words which I've used, which you've dropped from your question. If needed. I'm saying that if you pose this question of the leadership of the alliance today, it will not come about. What will be the leadership of the alliance will be part of the dialogue on the composition of the alliance, the structure of the alliance, the method of working it out, whether the alliance will operate at several different state levels or have a national level. These are all questions which will be negotiated.
Absolutely.
And if needed, and I'm not saying it will be needed.
But the words "if needed" actually only cover up for the fact that you are prepared to sacrifice the leadership claim of Rahul Gandhi. In other words, you're only going to do that because you think Rahul cannot stand up to Modi. You're implicitly accepting it, even if it's going to be difficult for you to accept it up front.
I'm saying if needed because those two words are clear to every mind other than yours. If needed is during the process of the establishment of this alliance, as Rahul has demonstrated, first in Bihar, where he accepted position number 3, and second in UP, where he happily accepted position number 2.
But those were at state level. You're now talking about accepting position number 2 at the national level.
Let us see if that's necessary, if needed.
But isn't it going to be seen by Rahul and your fellow Congress colleagues as an act of disloyalty on your part to even raise this possibility with the proviso if needed?
I don't think he's so childish. I'm absolutely sure that he understands, as I'm understanding, the meaning of the expression if needed.
Sonia Gandhi is an Italian mother. Sonia Gandhi is an Indian mother. And both of those adore their sons. And everyone in Congress knows that she wants him to be Prime Minister. Will she accept this clause if needed? My son can be sacrificed for, say, a Nitish Kumar or a Mamata Banerjee or Mulayam Singh Yadav. Will she accept it? Or will she see this as dreadful disloyalty by Shankar, an act of stabbing her and Rahul in the back?
I don't think she will. She knows that I have the interests of the Congress and the interests above all of the idea of India at heart, and that I am not arguing this in order to subtly undercut her son. I am arguing this so that her father-in-law's great vision of what India should be like after independence.
You mean Feroz Gandhi's great vision? Her
No,
father-in-law is Feroz Gandhi.
I meant
her grandfather.
Jawaharlal Nehru.
Okay,
Yeah.
her grandfather-in-law.
Her
But by the way,
grandfather-in-law, yeah, sorry.
Have you at all consulted Sonia and Rahul about this if needed suggestion? No. You have no idea how they'll respond.
I have absolutely no idea how the meanest secretary in the AICC or the peon in the AICC thinks, because I have not met them for the past 1 year.
Do you have any idea how your fellow congressmen will respond to the idea that if needed, Rahul Gandhi can be sacrificed? Because this is, in their eyes, a sacrifice of their leader, of their future hoped-for prime minister.
If they think that, if they believe that the only way we can bring this alliance about is by insisting on Rahul's leadership, I would go along with them, provided it doesn't jeopardize the alliance.
And if it does, sacrifice Rahul.
If it does, that's why I don't want to ask the question today. You are sabotaging this potential alliance by asking me this question.
Well, no. You mentioned it to the Times of India. I'm only picking up on what you mentioned.
I said if needed, and you dirtily, deliberately dropped those two words in posing your question.
Because the phrase...
I think that's such a nasty thing to do that I wouldn't expect it of a Cambridge man.
You're only reacting in this heated way because you know and I know that the words "if needed" are only providing camouflage for something that otherwise,
in your eyes,
hits at the Gandhis and also implicitly accepts Rahul will never be able to stand up to Modi. He hasn't got it in him. You've implicitly accepted it.
I didn't say any of those things. That's what you said. I said, if needed in the course of this discussion. And furthermore, let me point out to you that if Rahul stands on his own, that would be like the Congress standing on its own. And in today's circumstances, and after the results of 2014-2017, that is to pursue an impossible fantasy. That is why I want an alliance, and let the alliance decide, while it is being put together, who is going to run its leadership.
I'm just going to...
But I do want to point out...
I'm going to just repeat your words. Rahul standing on his own is to pursue an impossible fantasy.
Absolutely.
That fantasy is dearly cherished by your party. You're now making it impossible.
I don't know that it's cherished by my party, even if it is, which I don't accept. I, as a responsible congressman, as somebody who has been associated with this philosophy and its leadership for the last 30 years, say it would be in the best interests of the Congress to enter into a grand alliance, as they so successfully did in Bihar, and let us take that as the exemplar. It's what Sonia Gandhi did in 2004. It's again what Sonia ji did in 2009. I'm following a Congress precedent in suggesting this, and you are narrowing it down to who will be the leader, which I think is a question which at this stage could sabotage a potential alliance, and therefore I leave that question for the future, although for your headline you may prefer to go on pressing it now.
You know why the question of who will be leader is important? Not just because it may not be Rahul, and that itself is going to be a revolutionary and hated suggestion as far as your partymen are concerned, but it's also a critical reason because who do you choose? Mamta wants the job for herself, Nitish would like the job for himself, Mulayam doesn't hide his ambitions, and there are bound to be other people. Who are you going to choose? This grand alliance would have a multiplicity of leaders wanting to be the potential prime minister of the future. Modi, on the other hand, has a clear claim as far as his side is concerned, undisputed.
Therefore, I don't want to broach this before we broach the alliance. If you start despairing before you even start, you're never going to start.
Except that I'm not despairing, I'm just pointing out the odds are so great you'll never succeed.
What you're saying is so obvious.
Okay.
Obviously all these claims will have to be reconciled. But if you're suggesting...
Can they be reconciled is what I'm asking.
I believe that we should try to reconcile.
Try, of course, but can you succeed? The odds are against your success.
If I thought that I couldn't succeed, why would I make this suggestion? I mean, you want me to surrender today. I'm not ready. I'm not ready to leave the field.
You sure this isn't the triumph of hope over experience?
We don't have much experience of this.
We have not. Janta
I just told you that the Janta came apart for one and one reason only, that the BJP was within. Now that the BJP is outside and we're gathering against them because they have an alternative idea of India, I think this is a cause well worth pursuing, but in the realm of practical politics, by moving away from dependence exclusively on one inclusive party and going in the Sonia direction of having a rainbow coalition.
We have only about 3-4 minutes left. I want to come now to something you write in your blog about the Congress party, because it's a sentence that I think will strike everyone. Where the Congress sought and still seeks to be a party of everyone, many in our electorate believe it has become a party of no one. Yeah. Explain to the audience precisely what you're saying.
Well, there are many groups, such as the backward classes, such as the Dalits now in certain circumstances, such as the Tamils since the last 50 years, who have said that let's go on our exclusive own. but have now come to see over the last 30 years, 50 years as the case may be, that while in their respective states that might work, at the Delhi level, it doesn't quite function unless we work together. On our worst outing ever, as I've said in that blog, we've come out with only 44 seats, but we are the largest party of the opposition.
So what you're saying, and correct me if my understanding is wrong, that at the regional level, at the caste level, perhaps even at times at the religion level, other smaller parties have established a better and more convincing appeal to castes, to region, to religion.
And
Congress
state.
hasn't, as a result of which Congress, which wanted to be an all-inclusive party of everyone, because it's lost these, has actually ended up as a party of no one.
And yet the no ones add up to the largest party of the opposition. That is the point I'm making. That although we do not represent anyone in particular, and I think it's a proud matter that we don't represent anyone in particular, our effort at representing everyone has not succeeded at the national level, but when we pick them up from everywhere, then we come to Delhi as the largest single party of the opposition.
That was the case in 2014. Is there not a fear that if Congress can't put its house in order, in 2019, you may end up in Delhi with not 44 seats, but 24? And then perhaps the AIA-DMKs or the Mamta parties with a greater representation in the regions would be bigger than you, and you wouldn't even be the national opposition. Isn't that the great fear?
I go back to the beginning of your question. If you don't put the house in order, and half my blog is about how we can put our house to order because all the recommendations exist. All we have to do is follow through Rahul Gandhi's own direction that we must have an organizational revolution. And I know about that.
I'm glad you think 4 words spoken casually on the steps of Parliament amount to a direction, but I'll grant you that.
But he's been saying it since 2013.
But he hasn't been acting on it.
Because several big leaders in our party have been saying not just now. So
he's not man enough to stand up to those leaders, or is he being overruled by them, or can he not make up his mind?
I think he has accepted the position that he is the vice president. And I believe that when he is put in charge, and he's increasingly coming in charge, he will overrule those who have been pretending to be wiser than him, and we will have this organizational revolution.
Isn't it a strange explanation that when he's put in charge, he will overrule those who pretend to be wiser than him? In the meantime, by not overruling them, even though he presumably knows that they are wrong and he's right, he's allowed the party to literally descend precipitously downwards. I mean, is that a bizarre situation?
Well, it is a bizarre situation which should be corrected simply by Rahul acting on his own instinctive belief and reasoned thought that there should be a thorough democratization of the Congress party.
You're citing those 4 famous words of his on the steps of Parliament that we need organizational and structural change. He didn't spell out what he meant by them. He didn't give any indication of when it would happen. You're also hoping that when he uses those words, he actually is going to do what those reports you mentioned in your blog have suggested. The A.K. Antony reports, the earlier reports that came from virtually the 1990 Kumar Shankar Dixit report. How do you know he means to stand by all of that? You're just assuming it.
Because I have heard him explain in detail, both in public as well as within party forums, what his ideas are about the democratization of the party.
And these accord with all those reports, which are gathering dust on Congress
very
shelves.
Largely according, certainly with the Uma Shankar Dixit and Antony Report 1. I haven't seen the subsequent reports.
So my last question. The hope of Congress putting its house in order rests entirely on Rahul Gandhi doing what you think he wants to do,
Absolutely.
what he has hesitated to do till now, but somehow changing his mind and becoming stiffer in the spine.
Though that he has been blocked from doing thus far.
The vice president is blocked by subordinates?
Yeah, he's not. There's
not much strength there if he's blocked.
You're thinking in purely dictatorial or Modi terms.
I'm thinking in leadership terms.
He is part of a larger leadership. And that larger leadership has not acted, it's clear, on his suggestions. Now I believe that after what happened in 2014 and 2017, There is simply no alternative.
You're making Rahul Gandhi sound like a prisoner of the wider leadership of the Congress party. This poor little hapless crown prince can't get his way. The men around him or the women around him are stopping him. Is he really as helpless as that?
You know, you're excellent at your sarcasm and portraying it in this way. I think in the kind of setup that we have, where there is a consensus which drives it, the consensus has not been in favor of his policies.
Okay.
And that when he increasingly gets in charge, and inshallah, he will become the president of the party, then there would be no stopping the processes that he has.
So the solution is Rahul must have his way, and as a result do what you genuinely believe he wants to do,
Yeah.
but which he's been prevented from doing now.
Absolutely, which is why I think he should take up the presidentship of the party much sooner than later.
Shankar Aiyar, a pleasure talking to you, and also thank you for putting up with me.
Thank you.